Okay, so welcome to the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration, Thursday, 4th of May 2023. First item we were going to deal with is the, this is just to give you the fire escape plan in case there's anybody who needs it. So there's no planned fire drills this evening. If you hear, in fact, everybody here knows what to do, don't they? So there's not much point in reading this out again. I'll leave that. Should we just start off with apologies and changes in membership? Is that one for you, Marie?
We have apologies from.
I beg your pardon, Melanie.
That's all right, don't worry. We have apologies from Councillor Lever, who is poorly, which is why we've got Midland chairing this evening, and Councillor Downer is going to be a little bit late, but he is on the way.
Thank you very much. Any other apologies? No? Okay. Should we go on to look at the minutes then? And on page 5 to 12, any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Just for noting, it's no criticism. Item 29, the informal meeting of the committee will be set in late spring. Begin the scrutiny of the strategy. That never happened. I always found them really informative and really useful personally, but I will note that that's on our work plan for the future. Thank you.
Can that be added? Noted, please.
An observation.
Sorry, Councillor Jones-Evans.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. It's just an observation that in the past, and maybe things have changed, and I wasn't aware of it. Quite often we put all in also present. You put other members that are present who aren't member of the committee, people that come to sort of maybe answer questions and so on. I think it's quite helpful as a sort of a track back, but things may have changed. So apologies if there's been a policy change that we're not including other people.
This is right. Do you have a comment on that?
I'm not aware that there's been any change or anything, but we can certainly look at doing that.
So it does have the officers present, but I think you're referring to other councillors. Yes, okay, that's a good point. Which is the very last point, 37. It should read Pier Street as opposed to Pier E Street, ER Street, and of course Pier Street's in Sandown, not in Newport. But we've already discussed that, so that will be corrected. Thank you very much. Having checked the minutes, are we happy to? Anyone happy to propose the minutes as a true record? Thank you, Councillor Quirk. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Ward. All those in favour? Oh, you weren't here. Right, okay. So we've got to make 4 votes for 4. All right. Can I have any declarations of interest from the committee members on any items they have, any items on the agenda? Councillor Stewart.
On the cultural strategy, my wife is a professional artist.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk. Councillor Quirk, can you use your microphone, please?
On the cultural strategy, I am chairman of Shanklin Theatre and Community Trust.
Thank you. Also, I'm declaring an interest as chairman of the planning committee when it comes to the planning enforcement item. Thank you. Councillor Bacon.
I just think I should declare an interest. There's an item on the agenda, local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, or the LCWIP as they're known. Having spoken to the monitoring officer, I should point out I'm a member of both Brading and St Helens, Brading Town Council, St Helens Parish Council, both of which gave financial support to the development of the plans, or the plan for that area. I'm advised that that's something to be declared, but does not exclude me from being present in the room.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon.
Could I also give apologies? I'm going to have to go to Brading AGM at about 6:25. Don't think so. I'd hope it's advancing sufficiently to mean not.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to have to do the same as John, I'm afraid. Jonathan, I'm afraid. I am a member of Cowstown Council and Gurnard Parish Council that contributed towards the LC whips as well. I know it's an agenda item elsewhere, but I need to.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Although we're not making decisions on this paper, just get some feedback with the cultural strategy. I'm a non-pecuniary interest. I'm a director, non-remunerated director of a company which is a regeneration project, cultural regeneration project in Sandown, which is mentioned by name within the body of the report, amongst many others.
Thank you. And Councillor Jordan. Put on your microphone, please, Councillor Jordan. Oh, I see.
You're on now.
How's that? Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. I had no reason why I'm doing it, but I'll give my declaration of interest. So, I'm a member of St Helens Parish Council, also contributed to the LC Whips, but I'm not a member of this committee. B, I was acting as a councillor, so I don't even know why I'm doing this, to be honest. But there you are. Lest there be any confusion, that was my interest in it. Jonathan's looking at me, he's laughing. There you are. What are we doing? We're cabinet members.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. I do agree with you, actually. You're not members of this committee. You're here as cabinet members to give advice and information, and I'm not quite sure why we are. Anyway, so in future, perhaps we'll think about it again. I have some more hands up, lots of hands up. So, who was first? Councillor Quirk.
You have Shanklin Investments shown in there, and I'm the Mayor of Shanklin Town Council.
Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. It seems that all the town councils have contributed to the IC whip. I'm a member of Sandown Town Council. I don't have a clue whether they contributed or not, but I'll declare an interest. And also on the coastal thing, like Chris.
Thank you. And Councillor Beston.
Yes, also item 10, I declare that I'm a trustee of Shanklin Theatre and Community Trust.
Thank you. I think we've thoroughly covered conflict of interest. Next item is public question time. We have no members of the public present and we have no submitted questions. So we'll move on to point 5, which is progress on outcomes and recommendations from previous meetings. As you'll see, this is fairly self-explanatory. I don't know whether anyone would wish to comment on any of the points, all of which appear to have been accomplished. Would anyone like to make a comment on the progress on actions and outcomes? Councillor Quirk.
We've had a report back on the members' questions on the update requested for the Town Hall and Dinosaur Isle and the High Street regeneration, but not a lot seems to have happened so far. And are things still the same? Are things moving? Be good to have an update if there are any changes.
Question perhaps for Councillor Jones-Evans, could maybe possibly answer.
So Dinosaur Isle, obviously is a cabinet paper from Councillor Bacon next week, so you should have seen that hopefully. High Street Regeneration Task Force, yes, we had there's been some roundtable online meetings with officers with other areas around the country. We've been sort of buddied up with some other places that have got similar issues. That's how that particular support is carrying on. Plus we do have the We've been put in touch with an architect who specialises in reuse of cultural, no, sorry, historic buildings, old buildings. So that's a resource at our fingertips. But we also held just 2 weeks ago a session with Southampton University with some professors, and they brought over a team to do some research for how people in Sandown, and particularly focus on businesses, how they felt. In fact, I believe your daughter was there, Councillor Quirk. I sat with her, and very, very lovely lady, nice to meet her. And they were sort of giving feedback on how they felt. It was done in a very creative way through poetry. And it was quite a fascinating thing to partake in, actually. So we asked them. They wanted to do a piece of work on the island, and they wanted to look at place. So we asked them to look at particularly the high street in the Sandown, so we could help give that piece of work a little bit more. And of course, no doubt that will come forth within the Bay Place plan that's just about to start. The Sandown Town Hall, just a quick update on that. We have applied for some funding, some capital funding for that. So hopefully we'll get a yes on that. But yeah, so I don't know. Big fingers crossed there. I don't know if Mr. Ashton wanted to add anything more to that. I'm not really sure we've got much more to say about that at the minute until we've got the funding, I suppose. But it'll be bringing in youth back into the building again, community use, plus of course it's basically helping enact the planning we've already got. As part of the criteria for this fund was you had to have some planning already in place, which we do have for that building. So I'm not sure as much more I can add to that at this particular point, but it's a priority to get Sandown Town Hall up and sound and in use again.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. Councillor Bacon, do you want to add anything on the Dinosaur Isle?
Not really. There's a published cabinet paper. It's under consideration next week. Moving forward there.
Councillor Ward.
Could I just pass a comment about the town hall? Laura's briefly, so I'm up to speed on where we are, since that's not a problem. So is Chris. I just thought to myself, the things that we're looking at now is what Chris had already looked at. And I just thought to myself, why don't we do actions together? Why do we have to stop everything, getting on with other things? Sorry, Mr. Ashton, I don't fully agree. Chris's aim had always been to enable a youth club to be there if necessary and things like that and what have you. So what you're looking at now is what had already been looked at and accepted. You seem to have stopped. And, yeah.
It's basically it's the pound, shillings and pence. It's a lot of money to get into sound views state again because it's been empty. So that's the only thing that's holding us back completely. We know what we want to do. We've got the planning for it. You know what the local community want. So it's like, yeah, we're ready, but unfortunately, I haven't got the ready. So.
Councillor Ward, can I remind everyone here to use the microphones, because as we are recording, and the only way that we could be heard is if we have the microphone and we speak quite close to the microphone. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on this point? No? We'll move on then. The next item is item 6. That's the annual waste and recycling survey. So I'll ask Councillor Lucioni to speak on that point. Karen?
Thank you, Chair.
Your pardon?
Sorry, Chair. I think I had requested previously to put my item off. That was possible. So I don't have to leave till 6, but if it is possible, that'd be really, really helpful.
Yes, we have agreed this already before the meeting, and I should have informed the meeting at the beginning of the meeting. I do beg your pardon that because of time constraints, Councillor Jones-Evans would like her item 10 to come forward to the top of the agenda so that she can leave in good time. So
Okay,
can I
thank you.
therefore change the order slightly? Is that everyone happy? Thank you. So Councillor Julie Jones-Evans to talk on item 10, the Isle of Wight Cultural Strategy.
Thank you. I just got a little bit of a preamble. Well, it won't take much of your time though. But no, thank you ever so much, you Vice Chair and the Chair and the committee for allowing us to bring this draft to you. We're actually really interested in hearing your views on this draft. So it really is almost like a pre-draft, if you like. So we're still at the formulation stage. So a lot of the hard work's been done. We've done the public consultation. As you can see in the report, over 500 people have actually fed into this. There's been a steering group, and there's also gone through Island Collection Board on a monthly basis. So there's been a lot of people that are feeding into the document you see today, and it has used the LGA's cultural strategy in a box approach as well. So they had a framework of which to work around. I think it's been very helpful as well. So so this will be a council strategy, but it will also actually be owned by the island, and particularly our partners. And what we want to do is make the most of our cultural assets to improve the lives of our communities. However, the work to develop the strategy has been led by the Island Collection, as I just mentioned, and that's a group of arts and heritage organisations across the island who have come together with Arts Council support to work with us to take a more strategic approach. We haven't had a cultural strategy, as far as I know, for many, many years, if ever. So as you know, we're our Arts Council priority place. We were given that status in September 2021. I remember a meeting prior to that. We had a meeting with Arts Council England, and we expressed our commitment, and also through through our corporate strategy, our corporate plan, that how we were, committed to cultural regeneration. And I think it served us really well, because Arts Council England told us it's not just about the needs. They realised that it hadn't spent much money on the island, and that's why we're sort of flagged up. But also it was the opportunities. No point just putting money into a place where it's not going to sort of thrive on that and grow on it and use it and lever it to the best advantage. So I think the commitment from all of us, the council, to culture was really helpful in them deciding us to be a priority place. And since then, of course, we've had more money, as you can see from the report, come to the island, particularly in Ryde at the apartment, the old PAX building, £2.1 million cultural development fund. So very, very significant investment from the Arts Council into not only just the building and what the building was going to do, but actually into the place in Ryde, in the heart of the Has as well. So all these things sort of link in very nicely. So the strategy vision is that by 2033, so 10 years' time, the Isle of Wight will recognise a place that celebrates its rich culture and creativity in shaping individual and community prosperity. So it's got 4 key aims. Ensure that the Isle of Wight is known as a place known for great creativity. I think you probably argue it already is, but it's about making sure more people know about that, and that we know it ourselves as well. Nurturing creative talent. Thirdly, develop cultural audiences for prosperity and well-being. And then the last one is embed business resilience into our cultural and creative offer to ensure the strategy has longevity and thrives. And you'll see that within the draft plan, we've got there's an action plan there, which I know Councillor Quirk you'll be pleased to see, with the KPIs and the timings as well. And there's also some key appendices which you might be interested in looking at. Some quite shocking figures there, actually, especially about the female, the disparity between men and women and their wages. I thought was quite shocking, actually. So something to really get a little bit cross about. So it sets out what our role will be within this as well, because this is for the island. It's not for just us to deliver, because we do have limited resources. And this will be an important read across the cultural clusters that's proposed within our area regeneration approach. So obviously we've got the Bay coming up, we've got Newport Wight and West Wight and other places as well. So don't really want to take any more time. It's quite a lot of data in there, but I think the main point is, really this is an honest ask for feedback onto this, because we can take back to the island collection and the board, and the wider board's been quite interesting because we've had youth represented on that, and we've had our libraries represented on that. So it's been quite broad across the island, and we've had a lot of great support for it, I think, because it has been lacking. And even within our regeneration strategy, there was a section on culture, but we really felt, you know, this needed a bit more body to it, knowing the value that it can actually bring into a place, not only about the well-being, but also the prosperity as well. So that's it from me. Happy to answer any questions, and really looking forward to listening to the comments from the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. I do agree with you. It's been a very productive process. I've been involved myself, and it's been extremely good to see how it's been pulled together, all the different ideas from different parts of the island, and I think it's for me, it's quite an exciting idea. Have the committee members got any? Yes, I have. Councillor Quirk.
Delighted to see a cultural strategy. The Theatres Trust uses Shankly Theatre as an example of best practice, and has directors of the theatre actually presenting to people trying to save theatres elsewhere in the country, saying how we've done it. I think it's a shame that Shankly Theatre wasn't involved at all in the development of this. It's the prime cultural theatre for dance, music, other than the festivals. It is the prime venue on the island, and it works at a level that is almost unique in the UK. It's not subsidised either by the local authority or by the Arts Council. Nearly all regional theatres get subsidy from one or the other. Shankly Theatre doesn't. So we're doing something right, and there's lessons to be learned there about how you do things. And it's very easy to take government money and just sort of pour it into something, but what you want is something that comes out the other end, that actually is there in perpetuity. And I just think there was a trick missed here, and the fact that it's such a significant part of the island's cultural heritage, that it only gets one tiny mention in the report is maybe a little remiss.
So do you want I'll pick that up.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
So sorry, Chair. So you're saying they weren't invited, or this didn't come under their nose at all, this development?
I'm the chairman of the trust, and Mike is chairman of the Friends. If an invite had come in, it would have gone across one of our desks.
We can pick that up. Thank you.
My apologies for that, because it's a big. I mean, I'm a huge fan of what the theatre has achieved, and as obviously an error, I would say, in that. But that's what we are here for, is to try and rectify these mistakes. Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. The island collection, how long have they been going? What and who are they?
So the island collection have been, I think the idea first came about probably about 2016, 17, when they realised there was lots of a bit disparity on the island. Everyone was sort of doing their own thing, and we weren't being successful about drawing money in, because there was maybe sort of a lack of vision that Arts Council and others could really sort of get a hold of and understand, especially because there wasn't a cultural strategy that's sitting within the local authority as well. And they looked at what Cornwall did, and Cornwall did, they got together basically, and all different sectors, and decided this is who we are, this is what we want to achieve, and we want to have all these voices heard. So I think they really probably got going 2019. I'm thinking, obviously there's a bit of issue with COVID, as we know. This is the first major piece of work we've done in partnership with them. So, for instance, you've got people like the Classic Boat Museum are in there. We've got Independent Arts are there, Key Arts. You've got various different organisations are part of the board there, and we're invited as we're not part of the board, but we get invited to observe, and it's really, really helpful. And you've got the Cultural Education Partnership are there. You've got the Music Hub are there. So it really is quite a broad base. So it's called the Iron Collection, and that is a collection organisation that can speak. And also they have links then into their own sectors too. So all those voices can get funneled into it.
Thank you. Chairman, I've never heard of them.
Thank you. That's a useful question and answer. Thank you very much. Is there any? Yes, Councillor Beston.
So question around, or actually clarity around funding. Page 52, 2.25 mil coming from the ACE, which is great. Then it goes on to say will be supported by Isle of Wight Council match funding. Then page 71, ACE has already committed investing 2.25 mil, again, fantastic, over the next 3 years. Then it goes on to say the Isle of Wight Council is already providing an additional pound sign XXX match funding. So will the Isle of Wight Council be investing 2.25 mil into? Could we have?
Councillor Jones-Evans.
No, the short answer is no. We've already committed. When they say match, doesn't necessarily mean 50-50 match. It could be other, and it also can be in kind as well. So I think, for instance, with what we committed to the Cultural Development Fund at Ryde, officer time for that one. So because Chris is obviously delivering that project, and I think there was also a contribution to the island collection as well, wasn't there, for the next 3 years? Again, we had a small cash ask for this current year, but then we're looking at match fund with officer time and maybe other sort of resource that we can do. So yeah, don't panic. I haven't committed us to £2.5 million. Not saying I wouldn't if I had it, but yeah, we haven't.
That's fine. I totally get that. But with the greatest respect, it was a bit misleading in that respect. So
should we say something like, so an edit could be with support from the Isle of Wight
I
Council?
think that's really good.
Yeah.
And perhaps mention.
It's exactly what sorry, Chair, it's exactly the sort of feedback that we need, because it's got to read right. I mean, I picked up a couple of things that I feel are a bit not misleading as such, but someone could construe a different response from what actually it means.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk.
I think traditionally match funding is usually assumed to be equal importance. I think it's important to give something that is accurate rather than something that may mislead. But that's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say is I think it's important that when you're looking at cultural issues, you need to make it viable. And what you need, funding, seed funding, create something that is going to last, rather than just paying someone's salary for a couple of years and funding stops and it all disappears. But it's important the way that the funding is put together, actually looking to encourage something that's going to be there longer.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Yeah, thank you. It's that absolutely correct thing to say, and I think it does say that within the sustainable business. Absolutely, it's actually essential really to deliver any of this. But don't forget, we have got four new national portfolio organisations. So the national portfolio organisation is an organisation that receives guaranteed funding from the Arts Council for, I think it's for 3 years. Yeah, 4 years. So we've got new ones. So got Veterinary Exchange, for instance, and we've got Key Arts. There's the New Carnival Company. There we've got the guys from the department as well. And there's one more, last one now. Anyway, so they've guaranteed a lot of funding from the Arts Council for 4 years. So that enables them to deliver what's going to be in here as well. So that's what I'm saying. It's not about us doing it. It's about other people doing it. And because we have a strategy, it means that anyone who wants to write an application to Arts Council can use this. They can use the data that's in there. They can quote from it, and that will help them with their app. So basically, because we're a priority place, they will look, it gets like this big tick. So we'll get a big oh, look, priority place application. Okay, let's look at this one. So it enables more money to be drawn in because we have this strategy. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg in a way, if you like, but because we'll have this hopefully be adopted in June, that will really give that a big push. So hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Quirk.
Almost, it's just that organisations that exist just on grant funding at some point in time tend to not get their grant funding, and you don't want what you're doing to just suddenly disappear. They need to be working, becoming self-sufficient and viable.
So having worked with the Arts Council outside of my job here, sustainability is actually a really important thread in their applications. So if you ever do an application, they do ask about commerciality of what you're doing, how you can bring other funding in. They're not interested in just giving funding to that someone's just relying on that, because that is not good for them. They're not going to get good outcomes. It's going to be not good for the project that's being done either. So yeah, I think when you look, if you go to the Arts Council website, you will see that's pretty much embedded in there, I think. But of course they do exist because it's more difficult to be a sustainable business in the creative industry as well. So they do need a bit of a leg up as well. But we do all, I think a lot of us gain so much from what the artists do. You know, we may not even realise we are, but it really does help create an atmosphere. It helps create art, public art, all sorts of books. Really, it's everywhere, and we all benefit from that. So I think having support from the Arts Council is fantastic.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart, you've been waiting a long time.
That's fine, thank you. I appreciate it. There is no doubt that cultural strategy is very useful for the island in terms of putting together what we do and sort of promoting it further. But it seems that we might be looking at some other possibilities. And I'd just like to go through those very briefly with you. The first thing, and the critical thing for any strategy of this area where you're talking business, is people and skills. Now, you've mentioned skills. If you go to 2D, that's talking about young people. Now, one of the things that invariably you will find with any successful baseline business area is that you will have the people coming through. There doesn't seem to be, perhaps I'm missing it, but there doesn't seem to be the active involvement as yet of some of the key producers of skilled people already. Obviously, things like Platform One, some of the schools, specifically Medina, I've seen, Ride Private, for instance. You know, there are a range of skilled people coming out. And what often happens, as we've all seen, is that skilled people leave the island, go and do their tertiary education elsewhere, and then pop back here when they're about 35 or older. This type of approach gives us the opportunity to tie into skilled people and hold them onto the island, give them something, a pathway towards successful careers in this area, which, and I agree entirely, this type of funding has to be towards sustainable development. So that's the people. The second thing is where you put them, and that's the organisational and structures. And again, the organisations need pathways for people to come in. For instance, there's a tiny little film company, and one of its priorities was to actually bring people in from education through the sort of various steps that they need to exist in that area. And obviously that is a thriving and for the UK, a very, very lucrative area of opportunity. And then obviously you have the places which you already have outlined. It seems to me that we may also consider the possibility of what has been put out before about the Kingston Marina Development Film Company. Those companies, to some extent, are what's called inward investment, and inward investment fundamentally relies upon having the skilled people and the organisations and the places. So it might be worthwhile considering putting in place a strand of this strategy which actually focuses on the progressive development of the people that we have. And finally, it comes down to what we have already is the core of developing it further. We can't just import things. And again, it might be worth looking at some of the cultural key cultural people that we've had going through the island and see whether we can actually, as it were, use our expat community to draw in opportunities for this cultural strategy. But it does come down to the fact that you have a cultural strategy. We have a cultural strategy on its way. And that is why I think there is a very strong opportunity to take it forward.
Yeah, Councillor Jones-Evans.
Yeah, so thank you for your very thoughtful appraisal. That's been really, it is really, really helpful. I think you'll find there is a strong thread throughout this about our youth. And I think there's quite one actually quite strong line in there where it says, you know, we are basically a unsustainable community going forward. I mean, this is what people have said. This is not what I've said. This is what people have said from the 500 people that have been involved in this. So it's very, very strongly in there, I think, but maybe it needs to be brought out a bit more. So it's a bit more obvious that creating career paths for young people on the island and at a decent wage level, don't forget as well. When you looked at that in just the reference document at the back there, some pretty shocking reading, to be fair. And I think that's why, something like the film industry, which does have a better wage, is very important. Plus, also, Platform One have obviously been part of this as well, but maybe bringing out a bit more examples. I think I was talking to Mr. Ashton earlier that having some case studies, having this, because this to me it's not about how it's going to look in the end. It'll be a bit more shiny, a bit more pretty. Have some case studies, have some more figures and some full quotes as well. So you get that. I think it doesn't get over the feeling that I witnessed when I was at these events, and obviously you were there, weren't you? And people were really passionate, weren't they, about the island? And see how much potential we have and how much we've already got here, as you pointed out. We've got a great pool of talent here already. So it's about connecting those areas. But I think if you look at the sorry, my page is all over the place now, but it's the last so the nurture creative talent. So maybe we could put another line in there where it talks about almost like an audit of the pool of talent we already have here and how we can use that. Is there mentoring that we could do with all that? This stuff has been talked about at the steering group and at the island collection, but I'm not sure it's actually in here. It may be in one of the boxes. I haven't actually gone through all the boxes yet. The back's quite a lot to take on board there. Yes, I think have I answered all your questions there? Oh, sorry, just finally on the film industry, we are working. In fact, again, I just had a discussion with Mr. Ashman just half an hour ago regarding us getting match ready for that. And I've already had meetings with British Film Institute, with someone who works at the university regarding it, and with Arts Council England about how we can get match fit and ready as a community to make the most of this fantastic investment opportunity.
Thank you. You
Thank you for that response. I thought that you would have done quite a lot of work already. It didn't come out as well as I would have liked, perhaps, in the strategy, because it does still come back down to, especially in culture, to the people themselves. And you need the skilled people behind that. When you talk of the film industry, there is a range of digital skills, for instance, now that you need to do that sort of thing. And that's why places like Bristol and the like are doing so successfully, because they have a what you might call a critical mass. And I always worry with the island that we don't have necessarily that critical mass obviously there. However, this type of strategy can bring it together. And once, of course, you have that critical mass, it can take off.
Thank you. Councillor Beston.
I don't want to seem overly critical on it. Not. I mean, this is a great piece of work, but you mentioned using data, evidence data. Page 66. I kind of feel that we've probably, unless we're doing ourselves an injustice, if you like, we're using data there from 2013, Nesta data. 6 out of 32 local authorities. Is that data still correct?
I'm going to double check that because yeah, I've got a little note on that as well. To double check that but sometimes, pieces of work, they don't do them as quickly. We are using some old data sometimes, but it kind of gives us I don't know how much will have changed in the last 10 years, but we'll definitely check on that. I hope it's a typo. It might be 2015, who knows, could be, but we'll definitely check on that. And I think obviously there's some data that still needs to be popped in as well. You've got X's and things there. So there's still stuff, but say this is a good draft, but it's not the final draft. So this is why, having the opportunity today really, really valuable.
Are there any other questions on this point? Well, I think it's been a really useful debate, actually. I think it's really good. Some very, very good points have been made. It's quite important to get this right because I think when we've been inside the process, you need that outside view, don't you, to sort of to remind ourselves how best to come across. So thank you all for that. Yes, you can.
Just if anyone wants to talk to me about it, just within the committee that's here, but within, any of your colleagues, I'm really happy to have a chat about things and, let me know how it feels, how it reads, and how does it come across? Is it inspiring? Does it make you want to come to the Isle of Wight and set up a cultural business? Make you want to stay here? Does it get you enthused about what we've got here? So I think that's what's important to me. It's that feeling as well.
Councillor Quirk.
I would accept that offer to engage.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or proposals, or shall we note this document? You agree? Thank you. Having had that diversion, we'll come back to the original item 6, which was the annual waste and recycling survey, which is to be presented by Councillor Lucioni.
Thank you, Chair, and it's nice to be back at this committee again after a year not being here. So it's brilliant. Thank you very much. So we're here to talk about, you would like to know a bit more about the annual waste and recycling survey that's done every year and how it feeds into the improvement plan. On that, and then we'll go for questions afterwards.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing me this evening. So the annual waste and recycling survey has been conducted since 2015 when we first moved to service provider. We've set up a structure within this where we ask very similar questions here. It is quite an extensive survey, as many know, but the reason that we do is to ensure that we can actually compare year on year how trends and within so the survey is available digitally through SurveyMonkey and through the council website. We also make sure that we have printed copies available in all areas and leisure here. And in addition to that, we have large print versions, spoken word versions. It forms part of our existing feedback mechanism. So when we look at this and we start developing annual service improvement plans, we don't just look at the action survey, we also look at trends in complaints, compliments, and contact from customers, which is really, really high number of contacts that we have around with each 80,000 either contact. It's really high traffic area. We understand our delivering the. We use this feedback to work with our waste service provider to identify service improvement areas and out of what we're doing from the comments and open text boxes. And then once that survey is completed, our service provider provides a survey analysis report, provides public information, and then uses that to write our annual service improvement to make sure that we're delivering the best services internally to our staff, internally to our service provider staff, and externally to all. In terms of feedback this year, we do that comparison report year on year. We are growing. The report contains an overview of the themes and trends collected under fields, and on average, we get between 4 in 2016 when we rolled out the back bins. That year we had nearly 2,000. But the average is between 400 and 600, and we'll see that ebb and flow depending on thing, particularly live. There's issues that are changing or learning people number, try and take account. In terms of communicating the information that comes out, we do a news release to local media every year. Everyone will up on all of our trends. We do social media posts. Some of the previous ones are there on the screen. So this year we were very pleased that increases once again in our satisfaction. So quite high trending. Good scale to have over 80. And we also have some really, really excellent word maps that we've developed from the free form comments that what people say about their crew. And it's really good to see the words that people describe the way to speak, because it really gives us that positive guide to those in a very don't quite often get the appreciation that they deserve for extremely hard. So in terms of this year and last year, data the most have generally seen an increase. These are paired up in the bold and non-bolds going through, so looking at areas of service. The non-recyclable waste, that's your black bin waste, we've had an increase of 8 to 85% satisfied or very satisfied. Reduction in the dissatisfied. Similar trend with our recycling services. Similar trend with our food waste collection service, and with crew satisfaction up. So it's found satisfaction with the education book. Garden waste has increased. Assisted collections and satisfaction increased. Collection plus service where people pay to have a bit back door. Don't have time. We're very pleased to see. The trend at the moment is for general increase in satisfaction services that we're in the dissatisfaction, however. So this year and last year, we really keen on making sure the use that we listened approach is taken. Last year, we had 60% of response for use of curbside tech service that we have. So for those who don't know, I'm going to quote this while I'm sitting here, as this is a public. You can put your textiles out on recycling day in a bag of your choice, black bag, rubbish, and those will be taken to be recycled. And any items are reusable. Charity shops will also put out on the sorting. Very helpful. Recycling and reuse textiles, belts, shoes, soft furnishings. But in response to the understanding that only 69% of our customers were using that service, we focused a Tackle Textiles campaign, which had press release, social media, and lots of interaction with our community. We're very pleased to say that the following year, an example of where we've really seen a success from our service improvement plan, we increased it to then all of a sudden 38.59, so the extra 7% of people were using the service, but this is really more in the tonnages. So from 0.7 tonnes in 2021 of textiles were collected for curbside to 1. So we've taken the survey, we've seen where people weren't satisfied, where they weren't using something, acted upon that as part of our service and plan. That is how we function, the outcomes. Similarly, as a direct result from our feedback in May 2022 on batteries being a huge issue for residents at home, and 74.5 for a curbside battery service, we worked with our service provider, knowing that we had a new residual waste fleet coming in, and we looked at a box by the side of the trucks. We now have an excellent collection service, and one of the few in the country that actually does curbside battery fireproof safety boxes, which we 2.5 tonnes tells you how many batteries people. Huge fire rate. 2.5 tons in 2 months. Change. If that change didn't just come a benefit to people having those drawers of stuff in your kitchen that are crammed full of dead batteries. I know we've all got. I've actually nailed one shut in the past, just so irritating. But what it's also seen is a really huge health and safety improvement for our staff as far as batteries. When they go through the plant, the metals are sorted into ferrous. They go into a compaction unit once they've been sorted to be cubed, ready for market. Just cubing and compressing batteries in them at the same time that you're compressing items with aerosol gases in them, we get fires. Those fires are explosive, dangerous. We've seen a huge reduction in fires. And part of seeing that change has led us to another change that we're going to do at our bottle bank sites. They're looking quite tired and old now. We're looking at those locations where it's safe to put in a B, which is waste electronic and electronical equipment, banks, so that people can take those little things, mobile phones, small children, batteries, and all the things you don't want to see in your bin that can add to A, the fire risk, but also vapes, mostly because vapes and e-cigarettes are becoming our local environment. Not disposable, e-cigarettes being disposed as litter. Then they all have to be treated. So we're looking at rolling out some wee banks across the island to make it easier for electronics, reducing trips to the HWRCs, making sure that the local community people will have. The future, inclusivity and accessibility is a real big part of our service. We want to make sure that we're not just a nation that is suitable for one. We're helping understand what our waste and that is supporting every type of community need. Part of that is adopting RAP national iconography for a wide waste recycling stream, so that there is a recognised image stays the same across your recycling. And then we're going to be looking at some memory friendly communication and then look at ways of communication. English is difficult. Broaden out our education field, very supportive. We have seen increasing public desire for a smartphone app space, so we'll be looking at those options and seeing whether or not that's something that's viable now or something that we need to work on for a couple of years to make sure we're delivering something once well. We have seen less uptake of the physical surveys at the libraries over COVID, so whether or not that is a general trend for visitors here, and that's maybe we need to different lanes, making sure we're getting to a broad spectrum of people. At the moment, we are very reactive with our ways. We don't actively go out and tap anyone to fill them in. We do understand that the people who are responding, people with a very strong opinion or people who face, and that's something I think we find interpreting results that people who are non-caring so much about subject matter are very unlikely. A broader range of opinions. We do want to focus on businesses cutting down packaging. That was the request that came in comments. What are we doing about businesses? What are we doing about the amount of packaging in supermarkets? What we can do as both talk to our local and the plastic packaging. With that, there will be a very helpful change in relation to DEFRA, who will be doing the sale and businesses, which will. We also want to increase waste education and knowledge through our Waste Education Activity Centre, which is soon to be Education Centre. So as we move to full term service and out of our capital investment phase with waste, we will soon, fingers crossed, touch on the table, everything up and running as it should be, which means that we can open the waste education facility. Full-sized classroom environment. We'll be able to have school in, and we'll be able to have open groups coming. We'll be able to have tours and visits at night, and we'll be able to provide a really interactive place at our cycling education at all levels of the community, and helps make that a space where we're not just talking about what you do, but also how the circular economy. That's the end.
Thank you, Mr. Dix. It's excellent. I think that facility being opened and being able to actually along ourselves to see how it all works. Do I have any questions? Councillor Ward.
I've got 4 points actually, but I'll start with I think your service is great. I really do. And the frustration that you must go through, I can match because I see what happens. They do that. You know, the green bins overflowing with black bags, and so it goes on, and they're ripped open, and how your guys cope, you know, and not lose their temper, I don't know, but they do a great job. That's to say. The only thing I could think you could improve on, the service is good, don't get me wrong, but it could be better, is road sweepers. We have one in Sandown, Kenny, he's fabulous. Kenny will do whatever you ask him to do. But the trouble is, there's only one of him, and he spends most of his time on the seafront, high street, you know, the heavily populated areas. And the back streets don't get touched for weeks on end. But it's not his fault. He can't do it all. It's as simple as that. Batteries. What did you say about batteries? The bit of disposing of them again. I didn't quite catch what you said. You were going to.
Put them out with your. No, it's general, yeah, black bag day. You can put them out like you do with your food sometimes in a separate bag.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Back bag. Leave it on top of your
Yeah.
bin or something like that.
The difference is the vapes. We're asking people just to hold off what they bring, put vapes in, because they have many more parts in it than just a battery.
And the last question was, when can we go and see the waste plant?
I just want to touch on the road sweeper. That's Adam Road.
Yeah.
Wasting, yeah. And
in terms of when the plant's available, and thank you for your we are still on track, as people have seen from the annual QPMRs, the data of the council, still on track for a of the energy from waste facility. So as soon as that facility has gone through its formal testing stage, which is a 30-day test, it's a very onerous test, but we do then that will mean that plant is accepted. Then all the time that has to take place, construction complete milestone to be met. So you understand, with the whole site has got building, we have to clear everything off, take all the surfacing, planning, lining, all the bits around the edges that you do at the end of the construction project. At that point, we will full services at the end of our core investment period. And that's the point when we have, we're calling it a brown suits opening day first, where we will have cabinet members, elected members, and the political opening. Then we will have a bells and whistles public opening shortly afterwards. And as soon as that's done, then we'll be able to start taking lots of bookings. And the members of the cabinet are the first people who get 7 years.
And I'm very lucky to have visited with our MP, and it is a fantastic facility. And I believe you should be very proud. I don't know if you could just touch on why it's different. You're getting a waste lecture this evening. We started with the survey, but onto what we built at Forest Parks. As you know, throughout this pond, we have invested capital in new facilities of the island. At Forest Park, that means that we have built a new mechanical treatment plant. That's very unique in this country. We don't just run clean recycling or dirty recycling, run everything. So we've worked with a German company called Sadler, find a system that can be balanced and latest state of the art. What we run it on is separate shift. In the daytime with recycling, high quality recycling going through it. Recycling will go into a big tumble dryer, essentially meters long and high, and separate 3D fractions from large down to small. Those then go over a load of conveyor belts. They go through near-infrared scanners, are programmed to see levels of polymer masses, HDPE, LDPE, black plastic, and uses air knives, which is air shooting in the air, to separate those out into different material streams. Then goes over eddy current belt to separate ferrous and non-ferrous metals. Then how it goes through a ballistic separator that separates your papers from fraction. Once you've got all your different separated levels, and we separate Tetra Pak, which is your fixed material, then the final, what's left over, goes through a negative hand picking line. So we have an excellent staff of people down at a very hot block with 6 lines that are moving constantly. The recycling capture is so good that they're only pulling out negative elements. They're only pulling out the bits left over. And then once we've run through a full, we then get all the clean recycling bales up into the clean outside store area. They pick up the black bag waste, what nobody else does. Run that straight through exactly the same. All the black bag waste gets all of the metals pulled out, gets recyclable plastics pulled out. Generally, the paper and card is not reusable because it's contaminated by being mixed up with everything else. Get what can be recycled and get out. That is dirty recycling. So it's not to be mistaken that that's okay to put it in the black bin. It's still dirty recycling. It doesn't generate a great price, commodity price at market in any way. Quite often we have to pay to have that dirty recycling. We are making sure that everything that can be recycled is included, and then the remainder is shredded and goes to the energy from waste plant. The energy waste plant that we have here is the first in the UK. It has a particular, I can't go into too much detail, but the way that the fluid floor moves and the way that the furnace is built, it generates temperatures that are similar to gas. But it's incredibly efficient when it's running. Once that is up and running, that will be generating at the moment and already very exciting.
I just comment that, when I hear we've got the only example, I'm hoping there are other examples presumably in other countries. Good, thank you. Otherwise, if it goes wrong, we've got no help. Thank you.
There certainly are other examples in other countries. Twin stream MT plants are very common in Spain, and the technology we brought in from energy waste is come from Germany. Visited quite a few of these plants in operation, make sure that they are very good. We agreed to that becoming part.
Very much indeed. Are any other points, questions? Councillor Downer.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for an excellent report, Tash. Just one thing that we have spoken about before. Has there been any improvement in the food waste being placed in black bags? Thank you.
Yeah, we're still looking at 22% of general waste is food waste, and that is a really concerning thing. That we still have a large amount of, we see this from our composition studies and sampling that we do time. And some of the key areas where we have those problems are either people who have personal problems with opening an overdue or date past packet of meat or packet of vegetables, put in their fridge, they look at it, goes out of date, and rather than opening it, put the food in the food bin, the whole thing goes in the general. So there's a lot of thought that needs to go into considering in a situation. Shop, are you actually going to eat that in the week, or are you buying it on spec thinking? The other big culprit that we see, bread ends. For some reason, there seems to be a lock for lots of people that taking those bits of the end of bread out of the plastic, putting them into. You get an awful lot in the general waste. Whole bread bag of plastic, which is recyclable, 2 pieces of bread stuck inside it, but it's gone straight to the general. So it's those sorts of they're avoidable. Avoidable food waste is the majority of
What I will say that what I hear, a lot of people think that we don't put the food in a separate place in the truck. Get that message out to residents. It does go in beside the truck, so maybe we need to get some video footage maybe of where stuff goes, because I think people just think, oh, it's going in the same place, but no, it really doesn't. And that also goes to energy from waste, all the food.
Councillor Ward.
no.
Councillor Ward.
It was interesting to hear that you actually look at your black bag waste as well in terms of recycling. I thought that was interesting. You actually go through the black bag waste as well. Because I've often thought, well, some of that could be recycled. And I just assumed it all went to the tip. Quite clearly not. Good.
Thank you. Councillor Beston.
We don't put anything in it. We don't use any landfill at all. Well, there are some things obviously, but 96% diversion. Don't own any that are open either.
Thank you. Councillor Beston.
So back to the survey. Wonderful results, survey itself, but there's just one point, isn't there? Plus service that seems to be letting us down. In reading the description of the service itself, what that, and a couple of words stick out for me. It's an agreed point. Could that be a dissatisfaction with the service currently? Could that be that agreed between guys and the residents? And also what can be done.
So the Collection Plus service is something that everybody says, oh, that's a brilliant idea. Very few people who do take it up, but people generally, those are also the people who give us any feedback in the service. So I think I don't think we're getting a genuine view of that service from this survey, because I don't think we're getting a full representation of those. But I also know the take up is incredibly low. It always comes as a surprise, because we assume that many people are going to want to be able to have that opportunity, pay a small fee, and have bin men come through your gate, up to your house, grab your bins, and take them out and bring them back for you. But it seems that actually, as much as that is possible, there is very much a view that I pay my council tax, I'm happy to take my bins to the curbside. I don't want to pay something that is a 10-metre wall. When it comes to that agreed point section, that is found by actually having an on-site meeting with residents. So it's not an agreed point until both parties. It's not a dictated point. But clearly we do have to sometimes say, sorry, we're not going to come 20 stairs with a wheelie bin. Sorry, there's some things we can't do. It goes against the grain of health and safety, but also if we find steps to them, yes, perhaps better, a different way of working. So sometimes these pick up actually errors that have occurred where someone's ordered set bins, never thought about the fact they've got 20. But we do pick those issues up, and then we put that into make sure everyone's got the right bins to enable them to work as best as they can. But I do not think that's fair. Use that service, but I don't see those codes for the people.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Sorry, I don't pick up survey. I would say a lot more people. same service basically. Not paying for it.
So the assisted collection is slightly separate. Our assisted collection service is a free service. Does exactly the same thing. There's about 3,000 of our properties on the island have an assisted, and that is where somebody is, for various reasons, cannot take their ways to the curbside, physical health, mental health. Those situations, obviously, it could entirely come collection point at the property, and we would best endeavours make sure they've got receptacle that suits them, set out place that suits them. But it's not something that attention is drawn. Collections take place that they don't do that.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. That's been extremely educational, and I look forward to joining my fellow councillors in visiting the farm. Just a couple of things. First one, my dog loves the binman. He races down the stairs and goes and says hello at the gate, and they are really happy to see them. So please pass on my dog's Monty. He really likes the binman. In fact, he now loves everybody in orange fluorescent because he assumes that they're binmen. On a more important note, it is very useful to know all about the sort of recycling and the separation of waste. But going further back, the sort of reuse approach, it's an education thing to some extent, but also I was wondering whether there's anything that we should be doing or can be doing to actually encourage that type of reuse of electronics, but also of sort of cardboard and things like that.
Certainly is a lot. As you probably website shift to a new website. As part of that, we have a section in there that is intended to go over, so we can have, we're going to put a lot of community education about how to get in touch with the Air Cafe, with Men in Sheds, with all those different groups on the island, allowing people to find their way to reuse. There is reuse, and we need to promote reuse areas available at Limbottom and at Marsh HWRCs. So you can take reusable items there, and you can have it containers or give them to staff. We do ask that any furniture that you have for reuse, fire retardant tags still on it, and to put it out. Original tags, so please don't take them. Then we can reuse them. But so there are places there, but what's slightly more is exciting, the forward plan, which once we get all of the fleet back off of Limbottom and out of the big green shed there and back over to Forest Park at full service commitment, once finished, then have a big empty shed, huge empty shed, for which we're planning half of it, at least 20,000 square meters, be converted to and that is going to really focus on getting all of those, everything back to tea, pots, fridges, everything we can reuse, that we can pack test, that we can sold back to the community into that reuse centre. With that, we're looking at options for online sales, options charity shops in the high street to support them, and make sure that we're looking at all those options available, maximise that reuse of. Also operate a free reuse collection service for your here at home. And that is advertised on our website. It's advertised the annual booklet that gets sent this week or next. And that free reuse service come to every area on the island. This online can be collected, but it'll furniture, 4 pianos used, we'll pick up 4 toasters, we'll pick up 4 toasters. But if they're reusable items, they can go back into use the free reuse.
Thank you. Have we any more points? No? Okay, well, thank you for an excellent presentation. It's been extremely, as Councillor Stewart said, extremely educational. So it was very useful. I picked up quite a few ideas. So thank you very much for that. I think we can move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is coastal works. So for that one, I'm looking to Councillor Bacon to introduce the paper on coastal works.
be a very brief introduction because Tash has a presentation.
Again, right, here we go. The pleasure.
In my new hat, I'm now the coastal manager for the Isle of Wight. This is another area that I manage in terms of the coastal protection and defences around the coastline. So I've been asked to give you an update on what coastal management is in terms of defences, what we do, what's happening in Ventnor, because I know everyone's quite interested in that, but also what we're doing with the EA and those broader coastal schemes. I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour because I don't want it to be here till 9 o'clock just listening to me. But I'll be free to have any wider queries by email or conversation, phone call. I know there's a lot of very technical information. A lot of people are very interested in that local area. So, what is the Isle of Wight Council's coastal protection duty? So we have a vested responsibility for controlling coastal erosion under the Coastal Protection Act, which is administered by DEFRA and is broadly intended to allow coastal protection authorities to carry out capital works for sea. We do routine maintenance of coastal defences, but the Environment Agency is the primary sea defence authority, while we do maintenance of our own defences, and we will occasionally work with the EA to build. We also regulate the protection work of others, such as private landowners. So if people have private sea defences, they can seek permission to repair those within the existing boundary from the council. And they also can be issued when an MMO licence or a natural linguist is required. We can promote our own schemes that are part funded through EA. What do we maintain? Quite a large amount of stuff. So the coastline of the Isle of Wight and its estuaries are about 160 lengths, of which 22.2 kilometres is hard coastal defences that includes promenades, esplanades, railings, beaches, points, and that's 22 kilometres maintained by the Isle of Wight. What you see there is an extract from our shoreline management plan that sets out the policy summaries for the next 3 blocks. So that's the 20 years through to 25, 20 to 50 years and 50 to 100 years. And you can see that the areas that are broadly green are the areas that we have a no active intervention policy. So those are your naturally eroding coastlines where we have a smaller number or no properties to protect at all. You've got your blue lines, which are hold the line. So those tend to be areas where we have communities, local economies to protect, and we have that we want to make sure they're proper. And then we have your managed realignments, which you'll see in purple. And those are areas that over time, we know that with sea level rise, with erosion, with the way that the shoreline shifts, there will be a point in time in the future where we will no longer be holding the line, look to a managed realignment of where the sea and shoreline boundaries. Okay. So managing the coastline is done currently by 2 different teams. We have the plans and strategies that are done by the planning policy team under Chris. And then we have the coastal protection management, which is neighbourhoods. So the shoreline management plan was published in 2011, and the team at the moment are looking at refreshing that for an updated plan. They also have the very important West Wight coastal flood and erosion risk. Updated the shoreline and revised and put a lot more depth and meaning into policies that we have on the West Wight. They are in place. Over on my side of the table, we have coastal protection feature. So we protect 47% of the Isle of Wight's defences, 22 kilometres, as I said. Deal with planned and reactive maintenance, monthly inspections, defects and safety repairs. We have a capital programme for urgent works where areas are crisis or getting very badly damaged over time. Do emergency works where there is a sudden failure of any kind of sea defence. We have oversight of those MMO exempted activities. Those are things such as giving permission to those private defences, beach reprofiling when you're moving sand up and down a beach, those sorts of activities that are exempted from. To help with that, we have a SLA with Havant County Council with their Solent Partners Group. And they do annual T98 inspections. So these are your very thorough inspections of the coastal defences that they do at spring low tide. And they will go and inspect every part of those coastal defences helps. Then we also do the project management. Currently, Coastal Partners are supporting us with the project management and urgent works because there's not a huge number of people working within coastal management. Then we have the third string to the bow, which is the agency and our partnership with them under a memorandum of major capital. We are both project sponsors in those major capital schemes. I'll show a bit more detail about in a moment. But those are looking at the long-term reinstatement, rebuild or repair in Ventnor, Shanklin, Yaverland and Bankman Road. And they're also looking at property flood resilience. So, interesting information and data. 2022 asset condition survey, the first one we've done in its full extent since the 2010 one I managed, showed a shift in our assets. Many of the coastal defences that we have around the island were built in the they were built with a 50 to 60 year lifetime. That means that we are many of these coastal defences are getting tired, they're getting near the end of their life. That's one of the key reasons why we Environment Agency to major coastal schemes, where we know that we have seen an increase from 1 to 5% of very poor, that is failed assets. Still have 11% of poor assets. We've got an increase of fair assets, so that's a decrease from good, and obviously that decrease of good assets. So we know our entire asset stock is decreasing and getting more worn out. Working at the moment on a long-term range, make sure that we can extend the life as long as possible whilst we work with the EA iteratively. Key areas that we've picked up in the 2022 inspection, which have formulated the capital bid and capital programme that we have. Seaviewed Esplanade, as you know, these areas had some serious underpinning, has been quite a while. We're just going through structural inspections and to find out so we can head them back into you. Hope Groyne in Shanklin, those who go to Shanklin will have seen the end of off. It is now failed. Getting that temporarily repaired until the wider capital scheme with the EA can put it there. Shanklin Esplanade itself is in a poor condition and is included in the Environment Agency work scheme, so they'll be looking at the repair of that old Victorian seawall all the way across the back of the beach, and we'll be maintaining temporary repairs and any for their scheme. Shanklin Esplanade groins and navigation markers. The groins fields from Horseshoe bit near Luckham all the way through to Yaverland are in. We're going to be looking which ones we can repair now and work on making sure that the levels stay high. We also need to repair all the navigations that are those are a safety feature. And then we're going to be much replanking of those groins. We have had some very helpful Bournemouth County Council on that side of things because they've done a huge amount of groin work. The groins has been taken out. They have cycle into rather than it be. Wheelers Bay in Ventnor is in grade 4 poor condition. That's another 1955 construction that is getting near the end of its life. And the nearby Eastern Esplanade in Ventnor, I'll take you through what's happening there shortly. As you know, that failed in November this year and it's got progressively worse, and we've been doing works. Scotland groins and beach levels are something we need to look at as part of the programme as well. Groins there in a dangerous condition. Levels are lower than the works. Girnard concrete groins have collapsed and failed, which can affect the beach levels going forward, so we'll be repairing those. And also Queen's Road and Cowes, although we did repairs to that when it collapsed last year, there is further work that needs to be done to ensure that the void beneath the pavement there along the entire length of Queen's Road has some guttering and and is shored up until we very long term. So those are the key issues that were identified in 2022. And we are just doing another survey now, which we will get the results from very shortly, which will update our capital. In terms of Ventnor Eastern Cliffs Esplanade, so this is another section of wall that was built in 1955. And it is a concrete construction originally with let's look at these things. So if we were to take a side section, we have sheet piling at the front by the sea. I don't have any rock icons, so I'm afraid you've got clouds pretending to be rock. So the sheet piling is corrugated steel. It's been there since 1955. It's done a very good job of lasting that long. In front of that is a lower apron, which is the area that is where the tide's in is underwater. So the tide comes up to that first step that you see on the lower apron. We then have a revetment, which is the slope. So revetments are a 1 and 2 slope engine structure throughout the coastline that act to disperse wave action, disperse the energy from a wave before it reaches further up. We have a wave return, that does what it says on the tin, it returns the waves back out to sea, and a promenade on top, which is the flat area you walk. So what's happened here, over the years, the sheet piling has scoured away. So since 1955, it's got to a point where there are many holes within it. Some of these holes became very large, and the fill material inside all of this concrete started to be sucked out underneath. This meant that the revetment first failed, the sloping section, collapsed inwards. Once that collapsed inwards, it allowed waves to come up over the lower apron and wash directly inside. Complicating this factor, the very large gravity-fed sewer goes from Bonchurch all the way through to Lyme. This gravity-fed sewer takes in the raw sewage from Eastern Ventnor and Bonchurch, comes down to the seawall, pumps and flows along to mines. Imagine having that inside a coastal asset. Take you very quickly through some years, so you understand what's happened there. We initially had, as I said, the revetment failed and fell in. We then had, once that fell in, the wave action removed the beach material from underneath the promenade. It is straining on itself. It's then uncovered and undermined the sewer pipe. But we moved into emergency works because we realised we were on a situation may have the main break or fracture, and then we would have straight into the ring. So at this point, we moved into emergency works where we have covered the sewer, protected the sewer, the wall continued collapsing, slowly getting worse. Promenade gone. Pretty shocking to look at in itself for the section of seawall. This is where we got to the point where we agreed with the Environment Agency that the emergency part of these works was done. The emergency being stabilising the structure, stopping the further decline. As you can see, getting to that point doesn't actually fix the wound. It just means that we've moved from an emergency into urgent work. Urgent works is the phase we're in now. Blue ring on here, just so you're phasing and understanding. So emergency repairs, that emergency piece will be grant and aid funded. Now that all the invoicing is in, we'll put an application into the portal, and that first piece of work will be paid back to our grant and aid scheme of Degan. The next piece of work is the urgent work. So the urgent works will also be funded from funding major capital program, part of future scheme, and everything is required to be something. So the Environment Agency have confirmed to us separate business case for this, and this will be capital fund. So we hope to get that lower apron and the revetment here with a king post solution, building a new fence line by the winter to make sure it doesn't get any worse. Then once that is secured, we'll be building the promenade, get access next summer season. Then the capital works from the EA, progressing through their processes of outline business, through to full business case, and that will come into of what we. Fortunately, We now have no hole at the front of it anymore. Storm 3 weeks ago collapsed that lower apron entirely. It's given us some benefits in that there isn't a void underneath it anymore because it's into the void, but it has complicated matters, and it does mean that we're going to have to look at a few tweaks and a few delays to make sure building the urgent works that go in there, we're working around the collapse. Okay, so that's what's happening in Ventnor. That whistle stop tour, but any questions? The long-term capital schemes is the other piece of work that we are sitting over. And that's the long-term capital schemes in total have a goal dealing with those 4 areas we discussed at the beginning, where if we were allowed to let those defences fail, we'd be looking at around £5 million damage over the appraisal period set out in the strategic outline case. The total project cost across these 4 schemes is looking at around 60 million. This is increasing year on year as we work our way through the phase because materials is increasing and the complexity of these areas is surveys, ground penetrating radar and borehole surveys are revealing much more difficult structures and to deal with them. Currently, through the grant and aid funding system, the capital in there eligible for 62 million, which must be spent only on the specific projects it's allocated to, and the majority of that is allocated to them, which does mean that additional funds must be found and have been found in many cases with the work of wonderful morphology team and also by very pleased that those bits of funding. There will always be a gap. Very clear that because this is a phased approach that goes through outline business case through to final business case, if we get to that final business case gap on some of those schemes, then we will have to or find alternatives. How is this put together? How are we functioning? Partnership approach. It's co-sponsored by the Area Flood and Coastal Risk Management Environment Agency and the Director of Neighbourhoods. It has a project board that sit underneath there. So on that, I sit as the project director. And the hires Volker Steven and JBA the project executive with the EA and a program management with the EA, 2 senior users, and the National Environmental Assessment and Sustainability team from the environment. So the project board is very broad and brings in the interests of everyone it can be, and underneath that we then have the 4 teams. So many of you, as doing your town and council roles, will have met when they're looking to do. So we've got 4 schemes: Ventnor, Shanklin, Sandown, and Embankment Road. Embankment Road is a little bit different because it's not being repaired to protect property; it's being repaired to protect the SPA, birds, site, and natural. Sandown is Yavelin specifically, protecting the other end of what it would be that eastern way lose it. Shanklin is very much the seafront area from where the seawall exists, so from Fisherman's Cottage through to Hope Groyne. And then Ventnor is the length of Ventnor's seafront and the land. In terms of where we are with works, I'm not going to go through these in detail, but just upcoming work that is relevant to your local areas. Embankment Road GPR survey is set to be completed in May 2023, so you'll see stop-go boards turning up and people doing GPR surveys and then some GI surveys, just to make sure that we have a full understanding of how Embankment Road is constructed before we start looking at repair work there. We're waiting for the final draft of ground investigation packages for that procurement. We're doing the habitat regulations assessment, doing the environmental design concept statement, and we're looking at flood model for that area. So that's the upcoming work. Yavelland, we have upcoming work as you know, we've just finished doing the boreholes through Yavelland. So we're waiting for that laboratory analysis to come back, and that should be coming back anytime in May. We're going to do some further monitoring for a select number of boreholes, just to make sure that we understand how the structures are moving and how the structures are formed. We're going to do appraisal of the long list options beginning at early March. So that appraisal is underway, and then that will come down to a short list. And when we get to that short list stage, we are going to be looking at asking some of the council members and elected to be part of that criteria weighting stage, make sure that the criteria are weighted properly to ensure Isle of Wight Council operations are being met, as well as technical aspects. And key deliverables to be expected. So we've got GI and laboratory results and the ground investigation. Tank and seawall, very similar. We're in a similar situation with that at the moment. So we're waiting for the lab analysis and the ground investigation works. Got the appraisal of the longest options, so reducing down the options there at the moment. Key conversations that need to take place about Shankland being a conservation area, making sure that is properly weighted within shortlisting processes. And we're again waiting for those GI results and ground investigation. It's not much of a fun update, but it's we're working our way through the science. Ventnor is slightly more complicated. As you know, it is a largest urbanised landform in Western Europe. That's upon a number of rotational deep-seated faults, and it gives Ventnor its terraced beauty and its microclimate, but also means that within the town never actually stays still. The town is always on. It can move between 8 and 20 a year, which sounds small, but can cause quite significant change. So we're looking at two different activities here. One of them is about directly the coastal defences on the front, but the other is about slope stability. Probably the most interesting and exciting geeky bit, where the EA and JBA are looking at the opportunities to do some deep boreholes that go down to the very low sand drop slip plane, and see if we can find clean water for a start, because we know the water comes in from the Arraton Valley all the way to Ventnor, 1 degree, and Saturn. Then see if we can actually pump up that water throughout the winter rainfall period and keep it at the summer level. So we'll be looking later this year at seeing some test boreholes going in on the western cliffs, go down to that sand rock layer, and if we find that it's clean water, and we know that that is the antecedent rainfall, we're going to start looking at a couple of years of pumping that up, seeing if we can slow the movement in that specific land stock by stabilising. If it works, then we've got an option to expand that, have a much wider conversation as a local, something that to stop it from, well, not never stop, it'll never stop moving. Slow it down to summer move group. In terms of current works, the slope stability work, we're looking at doing some, that, as I said, later this year, we're getting the holes in, over on the western cliffs. So we'll be awarding the engineering construction contracts for that shortly. We'll be continuing the phase 1 planning for the pilot scheme, and then later in the year, probably after the summer holidays, we'll also be progressing with ground investigation boreholes from Wheelers Bay down to Bonchurch. Have moved that to the other side of the place because we know enough disruption. That's your brief tour of what we're doing at the moment.
Well, thank you for another excellent presentation. Are there any questions or comments, please? Appear to be none. So thank you very much, Ms. Dix. And I think in that case we can move on to the next item. That's very informative, very helpful. Thank you very much. So the next item I've got here on the agenda is the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans. Is that you, Councillor Jordan, or is it Mr. Matthews? Both of you.
Well, Chair, both of us have sat here and both available. Lee, aren't we? The report's there. What would you like to say? It's a cycling and walking plan. It's brought about because of guidance from government to create these plans. There are 3 plans. They are the 3 plans that we're considering at the moment. There will be further plans coming forward in the future. The idea of the plan is that we can apply for grant funding as and when that becomes available. And the intention is to encourage people for short journeys to do more cycling and more walking. Happy to take any questions, really. Lee, is there anything you want to add to that? Since you sat here patiently, say something.
Mr. Matthews.
No, Councillor. I think the only thing I would say is, as well as attracting external funding, well over the years, we're linking in with planning policy, getting developer contributions to help deliver and at a local level. So we're trying to get both sides of the camera.
Are there any questions on the report? Oh, Mr. Poulter, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Chair. And just to add even more to what Lee has said, it would go a bit further potentially through the planning process rather than just giving us a mechanism to seek and collect developer contributions. It may well be that through scheme proposals that come to us, we actually get land for routes, or the development sites can actually provide alternative routes that still achieve the LSWIP aims, but in a slightly different way. So there's a lot of opportunity through the planning process to utilise these documents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk.
I think I know the answer. I think it's yes. But when there are other areas that you're looking at the plans, will they all join up properly?
Yes.
Yes, we're just about to embark on the Bay LCWIP, and we're tying in closely with the place plan to make sure that they're linked. So,
The Councillor Quirk mean that they are all linked together in some way, that the whole Isle of Wight. Is that the meaning?
Joined up, Chair.
there is a piece of work that we'll be doing this year to identify a walking and cycling route plan for the island. It identifies the current routes, but also identifies the links. So the LC whips we've completed to date will inform that piece. So will help inform other areas that are undertaking LC whips.
Thanks, Chair, if I may. Just
Councillor
to add before a quick, just to add that, of course, it's not a plan that's cast in stone, and it will no doubt develop as time goes forward, as opportunities arise, and we identify other places to walk and cycle that we can put paths in. That's right, isn't it, Lee?
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got a general question, really. Do we actually monitor the usage we get of our cycle paths at the moment?
Yes, we have cycle counters in strategic locations that monitor usage of and cycling. They're limited in number and they're getting out of date, but we do monitor some cycle tracks, not all the network, but some. Okay. And we do have the option to put mobile strips in to do the count.
Okay. And just on the routes that are planned here, I mean, have surveys been done to see if they are viable?
Lessons learned from the Newport ride, LC was put routes in, they were surveyed as being delivered, but when we did detailed work afterwards, change and after further consultation, so there is a little bit of further consultation. Right? Flexible.
Can hire a bike, Ian, electric bike, mate, not far from where you live. Get up the cycle path.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Just on the sort of West Wight side, I know that obviously, and we won't talk about the Isle plan because we could be here all evening if we even mention that. But obviously, you're aware, obviously, of the Greenway and some of the concerns in West Wight that some of those ups may not be optimal. Are we looking at trying to actually put in something which is more code?
Yes, I think station, route development, flexible and changing.
Quirk.
Not related to these three, but in the next phase. Currently, around the country path, goes through Lackham, East Diverses, and suggestions for a permanent includes putting it back onto the main road, 60-mile-an-hour speed limit with no pavements and lots of bendy curves. That seems totally inappropriate. Can looking at that changing one be number on the higher priority when we actually get to the next phase, because there are some real issues around the at present. All of the cliff steps don't in the club.
The Isle of Wight Coastal Path is a separate responsibility, isn't it? But again, Miss Matthews off that.
Yeah, the English coastal path is natural England, but based in the Shanklin area and the Bay area wider, public to identify the routes, measure and being and a safety perspective. So hope that those routes that community identify safe routes then have to work through the organisations to.
The trouble is the route that the community wants is along the cliff, and that's where it's falling down. It's an expensive option to actually buy the property that you buy to route it or whatever. But I mean, it's around the island sort of cliff path, and having it hard inland doesn't help a lot.
Natural England have had quite a few challenges around the island and the country, but many around the island that they've had to get round.
It is several years late, I think, now, isn't it? Because the consultation period has taken so long and there's so many problems with it. Are there any other questions? We're all happy. Thank you. Well, it's a great piece of work, so thank you very much. We'll move on. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda then, which is the adoption of a new planning enforcement strategy. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. I'd like to say saving the best for last, but maybe not. One of the things apart from the island planning strategy that planning officers have been working with me on is the planning enforcement strategy. We started talking to town and parish councils about a couple of years ago, and certainly when you look at the peer review that was also undertaken last May, one of the things that came up and one of the priorities that came up with community groups, with town and parish councils, was how we look at our planning enforcement and how our planning enforcement strategy needed to be updated. And my gratitude to Ollie, James and the team for actually listening to what was being said. And I know yourself and me, Chairman, have been working quite hard on looking at planning enforcement. What we're looking at the moment is Newport has already bought into the planning enforcement cooperation, and they're helping to support the planning team by buying in another member of staff, which is absolutely fantastic. But one of the things that came to light, and myself and Ollie was seeing this when we went out to town and parish councils talking about the island planning strategy, was every single town, every single parish, every community council had their own priorities when it came to planning enforcement. There isn't one size that fits all across the island. And it was very interesting in the conversations we were having, aside from the IPS, with town and parish councils, what their local priorities were. So we haven't got a hard and fast proposal for town and parish councils. What we've said to town and parish councils is, what are your issues? Where are your priorities? And how can we support you? I think there is also a difference between small town and parish councils and larger town and parish councils. You know, Newport can afford to pay, I think it's £11,000 for an officer to join the team for 2 days a week, whereas poor old Chillerton and Gatcombe could, you know, that is more than their precept, I think. So again, we're talking to the small town and parish councils, and they're, you know, talking to them about what they would like to see us do. You know, Councillor Downer will know some of the issues of planning enforcement in Wroxall. And Wroxall is quite a good example of how our enforcement team maybe can work with smaller parishes. I'm not going to say any more because Ollie has come here this evening to make a presentation about this, but it's something I'm very, very enthusiastic about, as you can probably tell. But Ollie has the sensible solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bolty, do you want to have a presentation for us?
I fear it. I may have been missold. No, I do not. So I don't know whether you'll be relieved to hear that or not. I don't. I am merely here this evening just to assist in any way I can, although I'm sure I can magic a presentation up if that's what you really want.
Thank you both. I think the comment you made is very important about the difference of size of councils, and I think we're going to have to think about how the smaller ones can participate in this programme. Could I ask for any comments or questions, please, from the committee? Councillor Beston.
Yeah, just a comment, Paul, and you touched on the smaller town and parish councils, and quite rightly, it could be more set. And so there could be a consideration, and reading the paper itself, as I understand, town and parish council would then need to approach officers to say, we're interested in a possible enforcement order. So for the smaller town and parish councils, and sort of comparing that to the Bay councils as well, where Ian has got a lot of issues, not so much Lake. Shanklin has issues. But for the smaller, could there be a consideration for them grouped together, paying for the particular officer to come in amount of days a week? And so could that be the consideration for Bay area as well, that as a collective we could have an officer?
I think that the cluster ideas is something that's really only been approached really in the last few months. A lot of the smaller councils, like you say, the Bay councils, Sandown, Shanklin and Lake, could all work together about what their priorities are. And I imagine that they all probably have similar priorities about them being coastal resorts and the impact that some issues about hotels on the seafront. I'm not going to name any, but you know exactly where I'm coming from about how important that is. I don't know whether Ollie's got anything to add.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, Councillor Beston, I think the important bit that I would note is that the strategy sort of sets out what the Isle of Wight Council will do with its enforcement powers and how it will operate. It then has the additionality that can be brought about through extra capacity from town, parish and community councils. Now, what we are deliberately not doing in the strategy is being prescriptive over how that can or can't work. I think really what the message that I'm giving is that this is new to all of us. And as Paul has said, there is no one size that fits all. So we'll keep listening. People keep thinking about what might work for them. What we'll be looking to do will be to carry on engaging with parish, town and community councils across the island as we've been doing so already, particularly probably from late summer onwards. So we can be sort of demonstrating what the offer could be to those councils for them to be thinking about that at the right time of year when they start thinking about what their budgeting will be for the following year. And of course, the intention will be that we'll be able to draw on our experience working with Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council to sort of say these are the kind of benefits and these are the kind of outputs that we would be expecting from such an arrangement. But as you might have seen from the papers and some of the feedback that we received on the strategy, this was your point was very much a point that has been made across the board and very much received.
Thank you, Councillor Downer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to ask that with the input of these new officers, or there's one at the moment, isn't there? But will that take the load a bit off of the other enforcement officers? And have they caught up at all? I know they must be snowed under from the pandemic.
I'm happy to answer. Thank you through the chair. Yes, Councillor Downer, that extra capacity has helped. So you're right. So we've brought in a further enforcement officer, and They came into post in November last year. That was for a 3-year fixed term contract and they're full time. Currently, they give 3 days of their week to the Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council work, and the other 2 days currently supporting the Isle of Wight Council enforcement work. To give a bit of context as to the difference that can make to us, in November when that capacity was brought in, we had, I think it was just north of 150 enforcement cases that were unallocated. We had simply not even been able to look at them to even allocate to a case officer. As of last week, I was very pleased to learn that that number is now 0. So we are. Perhaps it's not a controversial thing to say, but with more capacity, or the way that we work, we can do more things and potentially do them more quickly. That's not to say that resolves the issues. That simply means that those cases are allocated to officers. So as a minimum, though, they are on someone's desk and there's a point of contact, and they have done that initial investigation work into what those issues are.
Councillor Quirk.
Where town and parish councils are contributing to the cost of things, certainly contribute to the cost of quite a few things, but there are difficulties that you run into. The Isle of Wight Council has decided to remove or reduce the number of bins that we do. Now we pay for the emptying bins, but the Isle of Wight Council doesn't expect us to pay less for emptying bins that are no longer there. And so you have to watch what you're offering and keeping it that it is something that you are going to continue to get, and you get what you're paying for, because you don't. In the past, we haven't always continued to get what we're paying for, contributing more than we should.
Thank you. So thank you. Just to pick up on that point, Councillor Quirk, yes, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's the importance here. Really, is that message of keeping it local and keeping it bespoke to the council that we would be engaging with. So the way that it would work, should a council wish to fund some capacity, is that there would be initial discussions that would identify what that capacity would be used for. So that would be driven by that council, by the community. What would then happen is that would be based on a service level agreement with regular sort of check-in points and monitoring of performance. And what that would also allow for would be that review to say, this is what the arrangement was when we started. However, something has happened that no one could have possibly predicted, and therefore actually the community may wish a different enforcement priority to be picked up on, and in which case we can then move and be flexible on a sort of partnership basis. The other point, I suppose, would be that invariably these commitments I would expect to probably be relatively short term, at least initially, in terms of maybe 1 to 2 years, while councils actually understand whether this is something they want or it provides the value for money that they are expecting, that their residents are expecting. So it would be I would imagine that there would be that sort of checked button at any point should it not work in the way that the council would imagine. But I would very much expect that we should never have to get to that point.
Just a sort of a supplementary on that. Just for guidelines for town and parish council, sort of guideline prices of what they equivalent. They equivalent likely to cost.
If you just bear with me, I will just find that out for you.
I think a lot of it comes from the consultation that we have with the town and parish councils. When we talk to the smaller rural communities, they may only be looking for a single officer to work for about 3 or 4 days in a year. That may be what some of the parishes want. Again, Newport have some huge issues, and they want to, I think they're paying £11,000. We've been also talking to Ryde Town Council as well, and Ryde have suggested an interest, and they were on this probably before Newport were, and saying, well, can we work together with the Isle of Wight Council on this? Again, they want to see how things are operated in Newport before they actually dip their toe into the water. But, certainly with the success that we're having and the feedback we're getting from the Community Council in Newport, it seems quite positive, which is quite good from my point of view. So again, it's building. I think what we're doing is something quite innovative. I don't know about any other local planning authority that is doing the same kind of thing that we're doing on the island. So again, there is no set template to work to. So we are sort of like working with our town and parish councils. We're very lucky on the island in that we're totally imparished. Other parts of the country aren't. So we have that advantage, and we're working with that. So I'm going to pass over to Ollie, because Ollie has all the facts and figures. I don't.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, so Councillor Quirk, in relation to the question, what we've got are some series of effectively prices, which are based either on an enforcement officer's time or a senior enforcement officer's time. The prices or the costs cover the overhead costs that we have, say salary, contributions, etc., range from anywhere from just above £11,500 for a 1 day a week of an enforcement officer, through to £58,000 for 5 days a week per year of an enforcement officer, and a senior enforcement officer would be circa £14,500 per year for 1 day a week, through to £72,000 for 5 days a week.
Councillor Quirk. Microphone.
In the Bay, the enforcement issues, there are some quite significant enforcement issues, but they are against rundown hotels. And the likelihood is that if you challenge them, you're going to have significant legal fees back to actually enforce the enforcement. Because they're going to push back. And they say, oh, we're owned by 100 different people. Someone has to sort of get into that and actually say, you're not, it's only 3 of you. That is going to take more than officer time. It's going to take resource as well. And it's only worth doing it if either the council or the town or parish council have the will and to put resource in to actually fund the exercise to complete, not just the cost of.
Councillor Ward.
I'm just going to add a bit to what Chris has just said. We all know about the Ocean Hotel and a couple of other down south. All these guys have done their business, okay? Issued the enforcement, etc., etc. The owners have not actioned them, so it sits now with the legal department. That's another problem that we have is it's then out of their hands and sits with the legal department. And I've got one building that's been years, quite literally years, waiting for legal action. So, more to it than.
Councillor Fuller.
Totally agree with what you're saying, Ian. I think one of the other issues that perhaps we haven't been as proactive as we should have been on is actually promoting where we're having successful planning enforcement cases taking place. This happens quite a lot. However, it's not quite as sexy as some of the things that normally goes into the press. And I think one of the things that I've been talking to Ollie about is about how we actually publicise cases that go our way, because a lot of the time you'll get some people that are thinking, well, the Isle of Wight Council doesn't actually do anything. well, actually, the planning enforcement team do a great deal. It's just not sold well enough. And I think if we can sell it better and we can promote its work better, then I think it will act much more as a deterrent than it does at the moment. Ollie.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, set out as well as implementing a new strategy, should that be endorsed at Cabinet next week. We're looking at bringing forward a whole range of things. So things such as more real-time information, how long enforcement cases are taking, you know, the turnaround sort of times we can think about, and as Paul has said, more proactive use of the media, so people can actually see, understand that there is a bite as well as our bar, effectively. So it's trying to be a bit of a multifaceted approach to also act as a deterrent, so we can minimise other impacts on our resources. We've also, just so councillors are aware, to pick up on the points made by councillors Quirk and Ward, we have looked at our processes to try and streamline as much as possible and minimise, in certain instances, input from legal to enable us to move things through more quickly, but equally to allow that there to be a bit more capacity downstream in legal, so we can use retake that capacity, but with other items to try and move other things a bit more forward. So it is a fair point that you've made, and that is something that we bring the strategy in and we continue to work through in colleagues, and obviously thinking about the wider shape of the organisation, the council as a whole moving forward, and about what its priorities are and how it then resources those priorities.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I think again, Councillor Quirk, as usual, you made some very, very good points. So one of the interesting things about this experiment, in a sense, is that, you know, as a unitary authority, we never did anything like this before. But suddenly, given the situation we're in, we've already piloted it with the environment officers, and that could be perhaps an example to look into more, because that seems to be working fairly well. But this is an extraordinarily difficult thing we're trying to achieve here, how you get a fair balance between the central council and the 33 independent, local councils. And as Councillor Fuller said, we are very lucky to be the only county in the UK that is totally unparished, and we can offer this model, which is quite extraordinary. And so good luck with it, Mr. Bolter. It's going to be not going to be an easy one, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this develops. So thank you all very much. We finally come on to point 11, which is the committee's work plan, which is the last couple of pages at the end of the pack. I don't see anything controversial, but does anybody like to make any comment on that? Councillor Stewart.
I hate to be controversial at this stage when everybody's probably half asleep. I don't think it's very good. I think that we are missing very large sectors of business and regeneration that should be investigated, and this committee should take forward. Firstly, now obviously everybody would expect me to mention housing, because I always do, and I'm going to mention it here. There are various brownfield sites which are being funded to be cleared, and there is the suggestion at the moment that they will be released for development, i.e. sold off for development. I think that's something that we should be looking into, because of course we all know that housing and homes is a major issue. Those are places or areas which could offer an opportunity to actually take new housing, specifically for rental, specifically for affordable rental, forward. This is just for the work plan, obviously. Obviously, it's up to the committee to make a decision as to how we take those forward. The second thing, which is something which has exercised my mind for the last 20 odd years, coming from central government and being aware of how business works, how business development works, and how we can actually pull things forward. The committee might wish to consider looking overall at business development within the island, First of all, to recognise what is there already and then to build upon it in terms of what is required to make those businesses more successful, both from a workforce point of view, which we mentioned in culture, but also in terms of sort of sequences of organisational structures that might support those businesses from research and development through to place development. And then just a minor thing, well, not a minor thing at all, but one of the issues again is around what workforce and small businesses does the island actually require? And when you look at issues around professional services in terms of building maintenance, plumbing, electricians, and similar, there is the opportunity to actually take that forward on an island basis rather than just let it happen, which is to some extent what is occurring at the moment. I think in terms of the island, the two critical things are certainly how do we actually make sure that there is places available for housing, and the second thing is to actually develop the industry which we have already. I did raise this probably a couple of decades ago with the then chief executive and council leader, and I've told this tale to many people, so I will repeat it. I went in, they didn't understand what I was talking about, and what they were interested in was whether they could get a little bit of money to go in particular directions. And what was said right at the beginning by my colleagues here was actually what we're looking for is a sustainable future for the island. So I will mention that, for instance, the environmental industries are something which I think the island has an opportunity to take forward, and is something that perhaps we might encourage the council itself to consider more widely. And this committee might be a very good way of pushing that forward. Sorry, environmental industries, yeah. Sorry, that was quite a long spiel. I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor John. That, I mean, it's the most interesting thing that's been said all evening. So it's well worth having that comment. I'm not quite sure how I go with that. I think I brought it to the chairman of the committee, and we'll have a discussion on how that can be.
We can certainly scope the suggestions and get your feedback into exactly what you want to look at, just so that we make sure we get the right information come forward to a meeting. But yeah, that's I'll scope the item out and then pass it around to the committee for.
Thank you, Ms. White. Councillor Ward.
John, what Nick just did was sort of spark the imagination, really. And when you look at the island, and I was born here, I knew what it was like back in the 50s and the 60s and what. And you could not imagine that level of tourism happening again. Okay, but that's what we had. So it's diminished, and the industry has suffered. Yet I can't recall anybody looking at, okay, so we're never going to go back to those days. So what's the alternative? How should we be supporting the island economy? Okay, and how can we generate not that level of tourism, but give a boost to our tourism? No one ever talks about that. I know Will's been here a couple of times, but he just generalises. We need something, okay? And I think it's no secret. I think the answer is Dinosauria, okay? When Chris Ashman first told me about Dinosauria, I said, what's that mean? And he thought I was being critical. And he said, if someone said we're going to put Disneyland in here, would you turn your nose up at it? I said, no, not at all. And then he explained what Dinosauria was. And it just seems to me But the current administration is totally blank. You talk about it, they don't want to know. So what's the alternative? And there isn't an alternative. You know, I look at this paper about dinosaur oil, the future of dinosaur oil. Okay, it might save dinosaur oil, but it will do nothing for the regeneration of Sandown and the bay and the island. You know, it's just, let's just keep trundling along with what we've got. There's no vision of how we could get better. That's what worries me. And I would like some professional advice, actually. Perhaps we could get somebody here to talk to us about it and say, this is where we see you know, things going. I mean, I sit here at night and I listen to our cabinet members, and they're all talking about grants, government grants here, government grants there. Nobody's talking about industry and commercial and things like that. And that's what the island needs to grow. I mean, Chris was absolutely right. Yes, you get a grant. You know, 5 years down the line, you've used up all that money. Oh, now what do we do? There's no vision about having a commercially sustainable, I call it an industry for want of a better word, but that's it really. And I'd really like to look. Members' question. Here's the paper for the cabinet meeting over Dinosauria. How come it never came to scrutiny?
Well, it's it is a bit odd, isn't it? 'Cause we're discussing it this evening, and it's coming out, it's being discussed again next week, so I can't really comment on that. I mean, I don't know if we can comment on these points. I know the overall idea, I think, started by Mrs. Councillor Stewart, is good, that we actually take a strategic view of how we can holistically develop the Isle of Wight's economy. This is clearly a good idea, and I think this committee could be a very good place to start that discussion. Councillor Quirk, did you want to say something?
Please. What I was going to say is I support what's being said, and I think scoping it, you know, it isn't just Nick saying this. I think it's a good thing, and we should be scoping it, and it has my support. Hopefully, so I think we should be progressing and looking. There's a guy called Daniel Burner. He designed the first real skyscraper. Make no little plans. It has no magic to stir men's heart. Something it's a bit bigger. It's not just along and let's revitalise a cafe. Let's actually do that regeneration as a proper generation to have much. That's something that we could possibly actually encourage to.
Thank you. Is there anything else on the work plan? No? In that case, we come to members' questions.
I think it would be actually delivery of affordable homes, because we've got a lot of projects that have come through, are coming through, where there are potential for homes, and actually sort of tracking and monitoring what's actually happening over time, and where they're being delivered, because we approved an application the other week. I'm 99% confident it will be delivered. We turned one down the week before. I had zero confidence. I think we should be actually just watching what is happening and responding to questions as to how we're not delivering anywhere near enough houses either to rent or to buy, and we need to do something better. And this is the commitment.
Be a good regular, you know, like we have a 6-month update on the planning review, we could have a 3-month update on affordable housing progress in becoming a housing authority. Share the same frustration on. Are there any questions now for the? And you've asked yours. Well, would you like to elaborate it? Because you were out of place on the agenda, so I didn't really develop that. Do you want to speak more? You want to particularly speak on this?
It wasn't on the agenda because it wasn't asked to be on the agenda, I would say. Not all cabinet comes through the committee. On the forward plan, it's been on the forward plan for some time.
We have corporate scrutiny who would look at this next week. They look at the cabinet issues, don't they?
Corporate scrutiny don't look at every single, they used to, but that was stopped a little while ago. So they pick specific items that they wish to look at. They don't look at everything that happen anymore.
So that's the question and answer. Sorry, it's not very helpful, but not very positive. Is there any other questions you'd like to ask? No. In that case, I'll close the meeting in that case. Thank you all very much indeed for a very interesting meeting. Thank you.